Hello everyone. This presentation is mostly for my students. I normally try to finish all seminars with some reflections on a very important issue: ethics, social responsibility, sustainability. These reflections have three goals. The first one is to provide you some tools to help you to analyze ethical decisions for your managerial careers. Ethical decisions are controversial, and it is essential that you can have your own discernment. The second goal, deeply connected with the first one, is to give you elements so you can elaborate your own opinion on what business schools have been teaching for decades, that the most important goal of a business manager is to maximize shareholder value. The final goal is to reflect on the global financial crisis of last 2 years, how it is connected with ethics and social responsibility. Since these reflections are about personal discernment, we need to do a clearing, which has two steps. The first step is we need to state objectively the problem. Is there any problem? If you read the newspapers every day, it seems that our financial and economic systems are in trouble. Even if nothing catastrophic happens, according to McKinsey, it may take 10 years to recover from 2008 crisis. According to the Financial Times, the crisis will be paid by the taxpayers, workers, middle class, young people for many years to come. Financial speculation that always existed today is substantially more serious. According to McKinsey, the global economy has grown from $10 trillion to $50 trillion, so from 10 to 50 since 1980. In the same time, global funds and derivatives have grown from 10 trillion to $500 trillion, so from 10 to 500. 10 times more than the global economy and growing 2 times faster. It is a new world. Nobody is trying to demonize the funds or Wall Street or the banking system. Speculation is a pervasive phenomenon. Speculators are all over. Most likely we speculate also. Buy cheap and sell expensive. Why we discuss these issues in a debate about business management and social responsibility? Because managers in these global funds or real estate investors that led to this global crisis are doing what business schools taught them to do for decades: maximize stock value. Second fact is that we witness debates that polarize the country. The debate about the medical insurance of last 2 years, or whether the state must support broken banks and firms using taxpayers' money, or how to reduce U.S. deficit and debt, who pays the cost. These debates are related to social responsibility, which is the core of this presentation. The second part of our clearing requires reflecting on how these facts affect us. What is our perception, our sensibility? Our main feeling is confusion, uncertainty. We look at the business management literature to clarify our confusion about social responsibility, and we see that 100% of all strategic management and most business management textbooks are completely silent to the social effect of managerial decisions. We look at business ethics books. The confusion is even worse. They present a mosaic of contradictory theories, which leave us even more lost. This presentation tries to provide a deeper discernment on these issues. It seems that one key reason for our lack of clear ideas is that we, business professionals, have a limited education. Just because the education is very specialized, it should not be a surprise. After 500 years of specialization, science and knowledge have become fragmented, atomized. We tend to become specialists on specific fields and are not prepared to analyze issues that exceed our field of specialization. In these reflections today, we will try to do the opposite. Somehow, we will be countercultural. We will try to do an interdisciplinary exercise to experiment on whether an interdisciplinary view can provide some clarity of ideas. In the first part of this presentation, we will add economic thinking into business management. Incorporating the metrics of stock value maximization will help us to realize that managerial decisions have a large impact on the community, Our managerial decisions are not socially neutral. In the second part of the presentation, we will add moral and political philosophy, psychology, and religions. This will help us to reintegrate knowledge, providing a meaning to our managerial decisions. The end of our journey today will be to realize how serious the debate on values is, individual and social values. They are not just another superficial or irrelevant issue. They are the core of our discussion. In the first part, we will incorporate economic thinking, as I mentioned you before, into business disciplines. The need to incorporate economic thinking into business arises when we explore why firms that seem to do everything well, following what the strategic management books recommend, do not succeed and destroy economic value. This phenomenon initially looks like a mystery until we understand the connection between strategic management and stock value creation. This provides a new awareness that many people are not familiar with. The maximization of stock value is a powerful force behind most managerial decisions, impact on probably every dimension of business. This chart shows how to maximize stock value, you need to focus on three dimensions. To have a positive EVA, you need to maximize market power. I will explain you in a minute what is EVA. To raise your revenues, you maximize innovation. And to increase your capital, you need to optimize the use of your resources. If you want that your stock price goes up, you need to be at the right of the chart to have a positive EVA. What is EVA and why is it so powerful? EVA measures your profitability compared to similar companies. For example, if your profitability is 10% and you are happy with that, but the profits of the average competitor is 50%, then your EVA is minus 5%. You destroy stock value. The investors will not buy your stock and the price of your stock will go down. This is very serious, and 50% of firms have negative EVAs. This concept applies to any organization, business, political, non-for-profit, even religious organizations. It applies to any of us individually. When we do something better, we do something better than others, we accumulate a power, moral power, market power, political power. Understanding this has dramatic consequences for you as managers. Why it is so dramatic? This is so because everyone in the organization feels the pressure to have a positive EVA, more profits than the competition, better results than the competition, which generates a pervasive need to compete throughout the organization. It impacts every dimension of any organization, even non-business organizations. What are the practical consequences? Let's discuss the three variables to see how they impact on this discussion. The first variable is EVA. Research shows that in order to have a positive EVA, you need to have market power. It is not new for economic science. Since 1930, economists know that competition is imperfect and market power is an important reality. In fact, if you do things well, you may become monopolistic because everyone will choose you, which is not bad. A mango tree will attract all the monkeys of the jungle if its mangoes are better than those of the competition, therefore accumulating market power. So having market power is not a sin, on the contrary. The problem is that once a firm has market power, it may abuse of it. How? How do firms abuse of their market power? The list is long, and this is what many managers need to do every day to succeed or to survive. The abuse of market power as a normal everyday practice is something that managers do without being aware of. Becoming aware of this may produce an uncomfortable feeling for managers with ethical values. The second variable that you saw above is related to capital. To maximize capital, you need to have intellectual capital and unique inimitable resources. You see in the chart how industries that have physical resources or firms that do not develop unique resources have a hard time creating stock value. This is dramatic. It means that you have 50% chances to work in a firm that does not create stock value because of the type of resources it has. It means recurring crises, downsizing, tension, etc. Then managers need to start making controversial decisions related to resources just to survive. How? By abusing of the human resources and abusing of the natural resources. What is important is to understand that stock value maximization is the real force behind and may limit the decisions of managers. The third variable to maximize stock value is the need to maximize its sales growth. You may think that most likely in this area there should not be any ethical concern. Growth is good for everyone, right? For the most part, growth is desirable. However, sometimes it generates serious issues. We already saw how excessive growth may lead to exhaustion of human and natural resources, what so many people discuss today, sustainability. However, another dramatic phenomenon associated with the need for firms to raise their sales is financial speculation. Speculation has always existed. Why today has it become such a big concern? It is very serious for four reasons. According to McKinsey, in the graph at the left, global funds have grown from $20 to $200 trillion during the last 3 years, as I mentioned you before. Currency swaps alone have grown to 300 trillion, so altogether we're talking about $500 trillion, starting from 10, 30 years ago. However, global GDP grew just from 10 to 50 trillion. Global funds and swaps today are 10 times larger than annual GDP and grow twice as fast. Second, the graph in the middle shows the second concern, the fact that around 80% of this money comes from non-Western countries, difficult to be regulated. Third, the third concern is based on the overall consequences. As McKinsey shows in the graph at the right, these funds provoke a dramatic leveraging effect. Families and business overborrowing, raising prices beyond any reasonable level. House prices grew between 100 and 200% in the last decade, after 100 years of stability. And the bad news is that for McKinsey, it can take a decade to return to normality, to deleverage. 4. The last set of consequences is shown at the bottom of the slide. For a survey prepared by the Financial Times in UK, the list of losers is large. Millions of people losing their homes, jobs, raising their taxes, increasing public debt, etc. This adds a very profound need to really understand more this phenomenon and the social impact of stock value maximization. What are the conclusions so far? The maximization of stock value is a powerful force with pervasive consequences for the humanity, good and bad ones. It promotes prosperity, higher human development, longer and healthier life, knowledge, better quality of life, equality, lower corruption, less drugs, illegal payments, fiscal evasion, informal economy, and better ecology, less contamination. But it has negative consequences in terms of abuses of market power, abuses of human and natural resources. What is our responsibility as managers? We are hired by firms to maximize stock value. If we do not do it, we are breaching our contracts and we could be fired. When we managers maximize stock value, we are following the guidelines provided by our employers, the shareholders. Who are the shareholders? Well, the investors in stocks, pension funds, mutual funds, private investors. In other words, the public, ourselves. But also our customers put pressure on us managers. When our customers make their purchase decisions, they are forcing us managers to make managerial decisions that may not be the most community-oriented decisions. For example, we sell products that affect the environment or lead us to abuse of human resources because our customers demand it. This is a very profound conclusion of this reflection. We, the public, investors, consumers, are part of the social responsibility discussion. It is a mistake to put the blame only on the managers. Managers do what they have been hired for, maximize shareholder value. If they don't do it, they could be fired. We need to focus then in the real drivers of this phenomenon, the investors, the consumers, the voters, the government officials, the politicians, the ones that develop and sustain our economic and political systems. The managers are just another piece of this discussion. We need to change our focus from corporate social responsibility to public social responsibility. Okay, let's go to the second part of this presentation. In the first part, we integrated business management and economics. In this second part, we will integrate ethics, moral philosophy, and political philosophy. Why, if we are discussing about business ethics, we don't just stop and analyze business ethics theories alone? The reason is because the reality is that most likely we have already done so. We have studied business ethics theories and finished with a huge confusion in our heads. Utilitarianism, the ethics of rights, the ethics of justice, care, ethics proposed by different religions, they all say different things, contradicting each other. So we finish with the same confusion that the one we had when we started. Besides, as we have just seen, the discussion goes beyond business firms. It involves the entire public. Moral philosophy provides a deeper and clearer view, critical for our clarification of ideas. How should we as public make decisions that maximize our individual and collective happiness? The same clarification provides political economy, how our decisions as citizens can maximize the benefits of the individuals and society. We will enter into a new field, a new way of thinking. It is an interdisciplinary exercise that probably many of us do not do very often. Science accepts that prior to make a decision, the individual or community needs to have some level of information and knowledge. Consequently, we need to start the discussion by understanding how people know, showing the main epistemologies, empiricism, idealism, and realism, as you see in the charts. Each one of them generates different moral, economic, political views. You may believe that we are going too far, but you will see how this organizes your ideas and helps you to solve the atomization of business ethics theories. The next slides of these presentations have a lot of information. You may get lost. Try to see the big pictures. Focus on the fact that the two prevalent approaches, individualism and collectivism, have important pros and cons, and the combination of both alone produces many benefits but does not solve many issues. Empiricism is the first epistemology that we will discuss. Empiricism is the belief that a person learns only by experience. It is important to understand why empiricism became so popular, so commonly accepted. By the 16th century, the main European moral authorities, the Catholic Church, the monarchies, the universities, were severely criticized and a profound skepticism became widespread. Most Europe was plagued by wars of religions. Empiricism provided a common sense that many people welcomed, a common ground that helped to pacify opposing views, which became the foundation of our political and economic systems, our constitutions. On the ethical side, the most influential branch of empiricism was utilitarianism, the notion that a person must maximize individual's pleasure and minimize pain, that ethics must be based on sentiments. Its most radical side is social Darwinism, the notion that the fittest survive, which produces an overall benefit for the whole society. This has become the backbone of modern individualism, the notion that one person must care only for him or herself, and indirectly this will benefit the whole society. On the political side, its main orientation led to liberal democracy, the notion that human freedom and equality, minimal government are common goals of every individual. This has become a central dimension of modern constitutionalism. It is extremely important to realize what empiricism promotes, a very basic common understanding, the notion that we all were born and want to remain free, that we want to preserve ourselves and our properties, and this is it. This does not guarantee at all our happiness or prosperity. In fact, it's an individualistic philosophy that does not promote the development of a social fabric, a community. And this is not a minor issue. On the economic side, empiricism is the backbone of classical economics. On the positive side, Smith's invisible hands, private property, personal initiative, freedom and laissez-faire empower competition for efficiency, optimizing allocation of resources. Initiative and entrepreneurship promote wealth creation and growth. It also enables the creation of a brain economy in which all economic agents maximize knowledge, development, and initiative. On the negative side, it does not help to preserve the resources or limits the abuses of market power and financial speculation, as we discussed in the first part of this discussion. Markets have imperfections, enable the consolidation of production, monopolization, obstruction of free market mechanism, avarice, greed, exploitation, and opportunism. Social Darwinism leads entire sectors of the population to suffer and die, permitting poor wealth distribution and inequalities. It has no grounds to oppose financial speculation, which benefits a few, producing negative effects on millions. Concentration of wealth strengthens financial speculation. Excess of individualism leads to lack of cooperation. Neoclassical economics introduces utilitarian ethics. On the positive side, it introduces advanced mathematics, provides a better calculation of variables that lead to the maximization of individuals' utilities. The demand curve incorporates human needs. The supply curve compensates workers, capitalists, and owners for the use of their resources. On the negative side, its radical laissez-faire is unable to control abuses of market power, which leads to unfair social situations. It is also unable to control abuses of resources. It does not generate a fair and stable system. Unstable equilibrium, lack of cooperation, unequal allocation of resources lead to inefficiencies and inequalities. The community orientation is absent. In summary, empiricism, individualism are important engines of wealth creation and growth, but have serious limitations in terms of large social impact. Idealism is the second main epistemology. It is the belief that human knowledge is based on thinking. On the ethical side, it proposed the ethics of rights, justice, the notion that every action must be universalized to assess its validity. For example, if I feel justified to be dishonest and consider that my dishonesty is ethical, then everyone can be dishonest, which is a nonsense. Therefore, being dishonest is not ethical. This generates collectivistic ethics, universal rights, universal justice, very common in the West, especially in socialist countries and in continental Europe. On the political side, it led to the ideals of universal rights, the backbone of modern democracies, to the United Nations Declaration of Rights, a pillar of our Western society. Kant's political teaching had a strong influence on our culture. Republican government, international organization, a strong historical evolution, and a positive progress view. Personal virtue is based on the obedience to the moral law, the backbone of real freedom. Idealism is controversial. Similar to empiricism, it leads to a minimalist ethics, divorced from the notion of human happiness. Its collectivism leads to several controversies. Who pays for the benefits that idealism defends? How the society can avoid opportunistic behavior of the protected sectors. It leads to inefficient economic systems, poor allocation of resources, which produce lack of economic growth and poverty. On the economic side, it influenced modern socialism, promoting a community orientation and distribution of wealth. On the positive side, socialism promotes a more fair distribution of wealth, cooperation and equality, a stronger community orientation, central planning, and government ownership of means of production, which should lead to a better balance in the distribution of wealth. However, socialism has negative social effects. It promotes a vertical organization that limits a knowledge economy, weakening wealth creation and economic growth. Lack of private property eliminates entrepreneurship and innovation. Lack of free markets eliminates price-fixing mechanism, leading to a poor allocation of resources. In summary, idealism, collectivism, is the opposite view than we saw before empiricism, individualism. Somehow both views are present in our political and economic systems. Both have unquestionable benefits, but also have limitations that the combination of both cannot eliminate. As both are based on minimalist approaches, both have limited goals. The last epistemology is called realism. It is the belief that human beings learn both from experience and from rationality. On the ethical side, it leads to the notion that we are a mix of spirit, body, emotion, sensibility, and to be happy we must incorporate not only our individual dimensions, but also the community. This recognition leads each person to value himself or herself, and also to value the community. And this is a brand new concept. It's the concept of values, individual and community values. Realism understands that both individualism and collectivism are complementary approaches, that a person cannot be happy if he or she does not consider and respect the individual and the community in their decisions, a balance. But realism goes beyond that. We need the social interaction, not only to fulfill our survival needs, but also to get the full development of our lives. Without the community, individuals cannot create families, cannot create life, cannot have health, education, peace, the best use of our resources. Individual and social values go beyond the minimalist approaches of empiricism and idealism. On the political side, Aristotle believed that man is social and political by nature. The society is critical for the sake of life and human growth. Families, villages, cities, the polis are associations of individuals to complement each other and to provide for the fullest development of each other. The social cooperation leads to discover how valuable each individual and how valuable the community are. The notion of individual and community values is the backbone to discover how much social cooperation can enrich us. Realism is extremely enlightening as it shows that both individualism and collectivism present a partial view of ethics. Both the individual and the community are valuable. Therefore, we must consider both in our ethical decisions. Interestingly, realism has key concepts that management science has adopted as essential to have successful organizations. The individual, you may remember from organization behavior, self-knowledge, self-esteem, personality, emotions, values, attitude, perceptions, motivations, all these ideas come from realism. The team, interactions, individual group, the relational processes, communication, influence, power, leadership, they are all ideas that come from realism. On the economic side, realism influenced welfare economics. It is a relatively new branch of economics, stresses the need to incorporate the individual and the community in the economic modeling, showing the need for values and institutional tools to enact them. It has social benefits. It redefines the role of economics, focusing on the allocation of scarce resources, a social notion of utilitarianism, incorporating the individual and the community dimensions in the demand and supply curves. It is an interesting model, but it will take some time to develop. Institutionalism strives to balance the negative effect of capitalism. Institutionalism has a microeconomic branch that today is widely accepted in business management. Firms today recognize that they are part of a community and they need to be accepted by the community if they want to succeed, that they must be good citizens. This is a great evolution. On the macroeconomic side, institutionalism is responsible for the social security laws of the 30s and the civil rights movements of the 60s, and ultimately Obamacare. Once again, it is a realistic approach. People voted to have such laws because nobody wants to live in a world with poverty, crime, and marginality, and the society is willing to pay the cost in order to live in social harmony. It has the negative consequences of state intervention that we discussed before. These limitations of institutionalism lead us once again into the discussion about values that we had before, which is extremely enlightening. Government intervention is bittersweet. It solves some problems, but it generates new problems. Let's see an example. Professor Gregory Mankiw from Harvard University proposes an interesting paradigm. According to him, the best way to get rid of illegal drug trafficking is not government intervention, trying to control the supply, but public values acting on the demands. The graph at the left shows that government intervention, trying to control the supply, is inefficient. It requires regulating the drug trafficking, arresting the producers and distributors, which leads to a reduction of the supply. This drives prices up, which invites new drug producers and dealers. The evidence of decades following that policy, prices and consumptions grow steadily. A pound of drug can cost thousands of dollars. The graph at the right shows that acting on the demand forces prices and consumption down, eventually completely eliminating the problem. This requires values on the drug addicts, family values, work values, spiritual values, moral values, sport values, and others. If governments try to solve social issues by more rules and regulations, they generate many distortions in the systems. If one firm sticks to government regulations and another firm does not, it generates unfair competition. The ethical firm can collapse. However, if consumers and investors act with values, they can compensate and reward ethical firms. This radically changes the common wisdom that government has to solve all the problems. The public is the one that has the primary responsibility and also has the means to do it more efficiently than the government by acting with values. What is the conclusion of all this moral philosophy and political economy discussion? We started the second part of the presentation stating that incorporating moral philosophy and political economy could provide some clarification of ideas. We can understand now that social responsibility issues go well beyond managerial decisions, that they involve an entire political and economic system based on individual and social values, which is more than just a balance between individualism and collectivism. As we saw, we need values. We need that all the public, investors, consumers have individuals and community values. We need a culture that promotes such values. How can the value system of the society be modified? How can its behavior be modified? A solution is acting on the culture. Why focusing on the culture? Culture is the acquired knowledge that people use to interpret each other's behaviors. If you travel to a different country and you understand its culture, you can realize what behaviors you should have and what you can expect from others. Different cultures have different values. According to Hofstede, Western countries rank at the top in individualism, while Eastern and Southern countries are more collectivist. How cultures develop individual and community values? Part of the response to these questions is provided by psychology. Psychology was originated as an outcome of philosophy. British empiricism introduced the psychological side of the utilitarian notion that an ethical decision must maximize individual pressure and minimize individual pain. Since then, psychology has been quite linked with individualism. However, in the last decades, modern psychology has been moving towards individual and community values. A new psychological model has demonstrated that emotional health, in terms of anxiety, depends on the individual and relational dimensions. Bowen system theory states that to be emotionally healthy and happy, each person must be mature, happy with himself or herself, and also capable of relating to others, enriching each other. In value terms, this means that he or she must discover his or her individual value and the value of others, necessary for his or her own happiness. This leads to the creation of relationships, a community, which produces harmony, happiness, and health. Mental health is the outcome of a system where both the individual and the community are central. It helps to understand the limitations of individualism and collectivism and the power of realism, as we discussed before. Another part of the response about how cultures develop individual and community values is provided by the religions. For Eastern religions, Taoism, Buddhism, or Hinduism, meditation or contemplation leads to the discovery of the individual's true self, the value of the individual. Understanding this helps the individual to perceive other people or the world and discover their value. This is the origin of love, compassion, wisdom, justice, moderation, integrity, and all other virtues. This is the beginning of a community and the backbone of everyone's happiness. For the religions of the Bible, God is love and fosters love for oneself and others. For Christians, God is Trinitarian, three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Each one is important, has value, and is able to discover the value of the others, which creates a community, the Trinity. This is the backbone of all Christian ethics contained in the Ten Commandments and of the Old Testament and the Beatitudes of the New Testament. They can be synthesized in the dignity of the human being, created in the image and likeness of God, capable of doing good things, so important that God turned over his only Son for salvation. Jesus' sacrifice of his life for humanity is a testimony of the dignity of the community. This is the backbone of making ethical decisions and enacting ethical behavior, the ability to reflect, to meditate, to contemplate, to perceive him or herself, to perceive the community and the world, and the fruit of that, to develop values, which lead to love, compassion, wisdom, justice, moderation, integrity, and all other virtues. Political sciences are evolving in the same direction, searching for a balance between the individual and the community. Realpolitik, the political philosophy that prevailed until World War II, was based on power. The world is bad, people are wicked, and the only way to survive is by being powerful. This leads to self-destruction. If one country abuses another, the other will respond on the same way. This led the world into serious confrontations. Liberalism, which prevailed after World War II, realized the need for cooperation, based on a strong rule of law and democratic and international institutions. However, as we saw in the example of drug trafficking, regulations and institutions cannot cure it all, as the global financial crisis of 2008 demonstrated. People need to act with values. Social constructivism is still a young philosophy, but promising. It stresses the relational side. The community, it is similar to the organization theories we studied in business schools, which follow almost identical guidelines. They need to have individual and community values. How this values orientation may solve the problems we saw in the first part of this presentation, the negative consequences of stock value maximization. The answer is, if we, the consumers, the investors, the voters, the managers, the government officials, enact our values in our economic life, when we buy products or services, when we invest in stocks or funds, when we produce and sell products or services, we may create an economic system based on individual and community values. The markets stop being blind. The resources get allocated based on values. There are multiple ethical funds, corporate responsible funds, with excellent financial performance and lower risk. However, their market share is just 1%. In other words, 99% of the public does not invest ethically. There are several lists of ethical firms in the internet. However, tell me if you have ever used those lists to make your purchase decision when you do your own shopping. This can produce a radical change in our political, economic, and social systems. Ethical firms and managers would have the support of the buyers, investors, and shareholders when they act ethically. Stock value maximization, capitalism, and free economy could continue, but supported in our community values. Okay, this is the last slide. Until this utopia happens, what can a manager do today? First, talking about the fourth dimension of management, this planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Regarding planning, many managers tend to have a myopic view, focusing on the short run. Incorporating values orientation, orientating the firm to the community, could help the firm to develop knowledge and relationships based on mutual trust and appreciation, and this should raise the value of the stock. Therefore, there should be no contradiction. Related to the organizing part, organizations as a discipline already has this values orientation internally. They need to care for the employees, creating a community, probably using other words, team, common goals, communication, leadership. Third, regarding leading, there's a common consensus among leadership theories that leadership must be based on values oriented to both people and tasks. Regarding controlling, the most advanced theories of control are based on self-control. The Baldrige National Quality Award promotes a systemic view of organization with common values oriented to the community. Thank you very much.